In this week's episode, we're going to take a look at offboarding employees out of Microsoft 365. What are the best practices and are there any pitfalls to avoid? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. Greetings YouTubers, welcome back to my channel and you're very welcome, especially if this is your first time. Andy Malone, Microsoft MVP, as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. On this episode, we're going to take a look at what happens and the best practices of offboarding employees in Microsoft 365. Do I just simply delete a user account or is it a little bit more complex than that? And also, what happens to things like security and compliance and ultimately what happens to the user's data. So I thought, there's lots of questions out there on, Andy, can you give me some guidance? And I thought that's a great idea for a session, as well as, the potential pitfalls that you might encounter. Now, as always, if you've not subscribed to the channel, we love subscribers. Bump that subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And of course, if you enjoy the video, then I would really appreciate you bumping that like button. It really does make a difference to the channel as I'm trying to build a great community. And as always, of course, if you've got comments about this or any of my other videos, I love comments. Just pop them down below and I'll do my best to answer your questions for you. So I think without any further ado, I think it's about time we got into some demos. And we got quite a few demos today, so stick around and you might learn something here. Okay, enjoy. Now, I'm sure you'll agree it's really super easy just to go ahead and delete a user. So if I go into the 365 Admin Center here, one of the things that you're very tempted to do when a user leaves the company, so if I just scroll down here, you can see that in here I've got a user called Captain Kirk. I'm a big Star Trek fan. So, of course, very, very simple. I can just go ahead, I can click on to delete, and it says, okay, well, first of all, hold on a minute. What do you want to do? So, do you want to relocate any content? Now, this is one thing that you definitely want to think about doing. So when you delete a user in 365, basically everything goes to a recycle bin. Now, once it goes to that recycle bin, it stays there for a certain amount of time, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the key thing is, okay, if the user leaves, then, do you want to give another user access to Kirk's email? So in this case, it could be a manager or somebody like that. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to simply click on delete, and there we go, that user is now gone. And the problem with that, though, is if the user's replacement comes into the company, everything that user was working on, every document, everything is now gone. So it's very, very easy to click delete. But what I'm saying to you is maybe not such a good idea. Now, if you go ahead and press that delete button by mistake, one thing that you can do is you can go back into deleted users, and sure enough, look at this, we can now see that Captain Kirk is still here. So I'm going to select Captain Kirk, and I'm now going to restore that user. Now you can restore the user for up to 30 days, okay? So if it's within 30 days, I can go into that recycle bin and I can restore that user back, and it will auto assign the user a new automated password, and it will force the user to sign in again. But the key thing that you need to know is everything that user was and is has now been restored. And if I just go back into my active users, and I'm just going to refresh this page, and scrolling down, you'll now see that Captain Kirk is now available. All right, so Captain Kirk has now been restored. Now, the same thing, just to show you here, what about groups, Andy? What happens with a group? Now, of course, groups are really quite useful. Let me just go into here. So we go into teams and groups, and of course, a group can be a really, really important thing. And of course, you can also extend a group to become a Microsoft team. And if you've not seen my video on that, then I'll include the link below. For the purpose of this demo though, what I want to do is that let's just find a group here. So this week I'm currently in Oslo teaching a class. So here we have our Oslo students. Now, obviously, because it's a Microsoft 365 group, you get a shared mailbox, you get a shared team website, you get a document library, so all your documents. You also get obviously shared contacts and all kinds of stuff in here. But the key thing is, if you go ahead and delete it here, then essentially what happens is, again, it's all going into a recycle bin. Now, again, it will stay into that recycle bin for 30 days. After that, boom, it's gone forever. So essentially, and I'll talk about this in a short while, only two things happen with data. It's either deleted or it's archived. And in this case, it was deleted. So technically, I could now go into deleted groups and I could say, hey, oh my goodness me, I didn't mean to delete that group called Oslo Students. So I want to select that and I want to restore that back. Okay? And lo and behold, it's back. Okay, now, awesome. Now, there is one little gotcha with that. Now, a Microsoft group which has been extended to be a Microsoft team. Let me just show you a sneaky little thing. If I go into Microsoft Teams here, and in my Teams admin center, what I want to do is, again, just show you something really important. Okay? So in Teams, I'm going to go in and I'm going to manage my teams. And again, here you can see that we've got a list of Microsoft Teams. And again, I could say, hey, okay, Norway Finance, I don't need this anymore. So what are my options? So I can scroll up, and one of the things that you can do is you can archive this team. So I can say archive the team and make it read only for my members. So again, what this now does is it just changes the color of that team. So just refresh this page. And this then comes back. And in here, you can see that my Norway Finance, it's gone red. So my Norway Finance, you can see it's archived. So now what I want to do, of course, for operational reasons, I can simply say, hey, right, I might need to reactivate that again. So I can simply select that team again, and I can now unarchive that team. And it's now back. It's now been restored. So if I scroll back down again, you can now see that this site is now active. But if I want to delete Norway Finance, again, I can select the team and I can now click on to delete. And it says, are you sure? I am sure. And off it goes. And it says that this item was deleted. Now, there's no recycle bin here. So how on earth do you get it back? Well, as you can imagine, teams are groups and groups are teams. So all I would do is come into deleted groups in Microsoft 365, and here it is. Here is the Norway Finance group or team as it is, and I can now simply restore that group back. So if you accidentally hit the delete button, don't worry initially, because you definitely have the benefit of that recycle bin. So here in the Exchange Admin Center, there are a few little tips and tricks that you might need to know. If I scroll down here, you can see that actually I have a user at the moment, Jean-Luc Picard. Like I said, I'm a Trekkie. Now, if I click into Jean-Luc, and if I click into the Organization tab, you can see that we have something that says Manager. So I can go into here and I can assign a manager to Jean-Luc's account. And I now assign Adele as a manager and save that, what happens is when Jean-Luc leaves the company, and if I delete his user account, his mailbox will still be accessible by Adele for a maximum of 30 days. So if she's a salesperson or he's a salesperson, she's a manager, she needs to restore that really important information back, then by adding a manager to the organization information will definitely help. So what else can you also do? Well, if I click into mailbox option here, there are again a number of things that you can potentially do. So in here you can you'll see we have something called the retention policy, and the retention policy by default is 14 days. So as I've mentioned, only two things happen with your data in Microsoft 365. It's either deleted or it's archived off. Now, if it's deleted, so when users go in and they, of course, delete content in Microsoft Outlook, what happens is in Microsoft Outlook, that goes into a recycle bin, of course. And in that recycle bin, our data, you would think it would be stored for 30 days. In actual fact, it's actually only stored in the mailbox for 14 days, and this has been around for a very long time. So one important thing or question that you might want to do is, Andy, how can I get access, or how can I change that? Now, I'm going to include this link in my presentation, but one thing that you need to know here is you can do it through PowerShell. So here you can see set-mailbox-identity, the name of the user, so in this case Emily, -retain deleted items for, and you can increase that to 30 days, okay? And you can, again, generally increase that if you want to. So that is a really useful feature here, okay? So you can customize or you can say how long you want that user's mailbox deleted for. Now, of course, any deleted items will then go into the deleted item container, and 30 days later it will be removed. Now, another solution that you might, again, also want to consider is, and you can do this, to be honest, in a number of places. So if I go into, let's say, Microsoft 365, and if I go into users and active users. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to my user. So I'm just going to scroll down here, and here is Jean-Luc. So I'm going to go into Jean-Luc's account. And again, you can do this in a number of places. You can go in here. I can go into the Mail tab here. And again, the nice thing about this is it really does save you quite a lot of time rather than constantly going and trolling through the Microsoft Exchange menus. But one thing that we have here is the ability to convert Jean-Luc's mailbox into what we call a shared mailbox. And essentially a shared mailbox, let's say, for example, Jean-Luc is a member of, let's say, a sales team. Well, it just means that you can then assign other members of that team to Jean-Luc's mailbox, remove Jean-Luc, and then that team will still be able to access that content for collaboration purposes. All right. And again, it's very simple to convert. So I just simply convert this mailbox, and within a couple of seconds, this has now become a shared mailbox. So what happens if I want to convert it back to be a regular mailbox? Is that possible? Now, just to quickly mention that, if I just scroll down here, here is Jean-Luc's mailbox, just to say that I could now potentially remove the license for this mailbox. The thing is that you don't need a license to access a shared mailbox, but you do need to be licensed, if you understand what I mean. All right. So one of the things that you might want to do is just come up here, click on the little ellipse, and look, I can now convert this back to be a regular mailbox. So it's not an irreversible action. You can convert it to be a shared mailbox, and then when it's needed to be, you can convert it back again. And that's a really, really nice feature there. Okay, for my next demo, what I want to do is I'm going to come down here into Microsoft 365 and I'm going to come into the Purview or Compliance Center. I'm just going to close this option out. And what have we got here? Well, as I've mentioned, there are two ways to deal with your data in Microsoft 365. You can either delete it or you can archive it. Now, as I mentioned, what happens to your data when you delete a user account? Of course, everything is deleted. And it goes into what we call a recycle bin. And in fact, I'll just show you how this works. In terms of things like SharePoint document libraries, OneDrives, and personal files and things like that, the way that works is if I come into SharePoint here, and in SharePoint, if I go into, let's say, an active website here, and I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to just choose one at random here. So I think I've got here we go, our Oslo students here. And I'm going to go into the Oslo students website. Now, in the Oslo students website, I've gone ahead and I've created a document library, a folder, if you will. And you can see that within here, I've got a number of items. Now, the question is, what would happen if I deleted one of these items? So I would, sure enough, I go in here, I would delete it, and of course, it goes off into the site's recycle bin. Now, in that recycle bin here, you can see that the item is here, and it will stay here for up to 30 days. Now, beyond that 30 days, what would happen to it then? Well, it would disappear from the screen, but if you look down here at the bottom of the page, look at that. It would go into the second stage recycle bin for a further 63 days. So the next thing we're going to look at then is retention policies. And for that, we simply come into data lifecycle management in Microsoft Purview. And here we have some retention policies and we have some label policies. This is labeling and classification. We can also create what we call adaptive scopes as well. Let me just show you that. So what I've done is I've just gone and created a scope called the Oslo HR scope. And I'll just show you how easy it is. So if I just go into it, it says, okay, is this for users? Is it for SharePoint sites? Or is it for Microsoft 365 groups? And because it's dynamic, you can display a rule, if you will. So you can see here, I've said display name is equal to sales. All right. So if any users or groups in this case have a sales name, you can add it to the adaptive scope. So what that means is when I come back into data lifecycle management, and let's say now I want to create a new retention policy. It's saying, okay, do you want to create a retention policy? And I'm going to say, yeah, I think I actually will. Now, I'm in the UK, so I'm going to type in UK retention policy. Okay. Now, of course, it didn't work for us because of Brexit. But that's another story. Okay, going to click on next, and in here, you can put in a little description, of course, if you want to. I'm going to click on next, and look, it now says, hey, do you want to use that adaptive scope that you just created, or do you want to create a static scope? So let me just show you this. So I can basically say, are there any specific users or groups, SharePoint sites, teams, what things do you want to be retained? And in this case, you can say, do you want all recipients or just specific recipients? Okay, so now it says, okay, I'm going to ignore the adaptive scope right now, but just to show you, it would say, okay, which adaptive scope do you want to add in? So I can simply click onto the adaptive scope, and I've now added in Oslo HR support. So if any of my users have the word sales in a department or anything like that, they will automatically become under the wing of this scope, if you will. So now, because I'm going to do a manual scope, let me come back to static and show you this. This is really important. So again, I'm just going to accept the default settings here of all users. And I'm saying, okay, how long do you want me to retain the items for? And you've got a number of options. You can retain them for a specific period. You can retain the items forever. And this is essentially you're placing the content in a permanent archive, or only delete the items when they reach a certain age. So it's a similar feature, it's just a slightly different way of explaining it. So for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to click on custom and I'm going to choose a 1 year retention period. Okay, and you can say from when the item was last created or when it was last modified. The last modified is a particularly useful one because let's say, one of the problems with users is that often they store in crazy amounts of data when they don't need to, or they store old versions. So if that's a problem for you, you can say, okay, that's fine. When the item was last modified, what do you want me to do? Delete the item automatically. So if I set up a 1 year policy now, which says, hey, let's say on the 1st of August 2023, we are going to delete that file. So what happens is on the 1st of August 2023, it goes into the recycle bin system that I've already mentioned. One thing that you might want to do is, rather than when it was, you might want to say when it was created, so a year from when the document was created. I like the one that says when it was last modified, because let's say you created it in August, but you then modified it in November. And if that was the case, it's a year from November. So basically, if you've got an old project that people are very rarely using, what would happen is over that period of time, less and less people would use it. And ultimately, this label would kick in and realize, hey, I can now delete this content. So this is really useful. Another thing you might want to say is, I don't want to do anything. I don't want it removed or retained. You might do this for personal information. All right. Again, only delete the items when they receive a certain age. You can do that. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think, or over a specific period. Now, for legal and compliance reasons, you may want to make a permanent copy of that data. This is essentially where you're placing the content on legal hold rather than a particular user. Now, although it's not officially legal hold, it's a long-term archive, but fundamentally, it's a similar feature. So I'm going to click on next, I'm going to submit, and you can now see that I've now created a retention policy. All right, so that, ladies and gentlemen, is a retention policy. All right. So if you want to use archiving in Microsoft 365, this is actually set on the user's mailbox. And on the user's mailbox here, for example, if I go into Alan's mailbox here, and I'm going to go in here, I can see that his mailbox is enabled, and I'm now just going to check to see if his archive is switched on. So going in here, you can see that the archive is available for Alan's account. Again, depending on your license, the amount that you get in the archive may differ. So from small business, for example, to enterprise customers, small business may get 50 gig, enterprise customers may get unlimited, okay, depending on your license. All right, so there you have it, just a little bit about data lifecycle management. And this is really nice because you can come here, you can import content in, you can archive content out. And again, it gives you it's almost like a helicopter view of all of your data in terms of lifecycle management. Okay, the last topics that I want to talk about are litigation and legal hold. So litigation and legal hold, very similar actually in terms of concepts. Litigation hold can essentially be assigned on a user's mailbox. So as I mentioned in Microsoft 365, your data will only do one of two things. It will either be deleted or it will be archived. And litigation hold essentially archives that content for an unspecified or specified amount of time. So what I can do is I can come into Microsoft 365 here. So I'm in the active portal here. I can come down to a user here. So let's say, for example, I've got a user here called Christy Klein. So I'm going to click onto Christy's account in Microsoft 365, and you can see that we have a mail tab. And if I just scroll down, one of the options here is to place Christy's account on litigation hold. Now what that means is, well, to be honest, there are a number of reasons to place a user's account on hold. One could be for a legal reason, or it might even be for an operational reason. So, let's say you want to keep a permanent copy of Christie's data, or even if Christie's leaving the company, what that means is you can place the mailbox or the user account on legal hold. You can delete the user, the data is retained, and then you can create a new user and then reassign the license or the rights to that mailbox or that account to the new user. Okay, so it's a very, very powerful way of ensuring that you don't lose data. Now, as well as setting this up here in Microsoft 365, of course, I can also flip over into the Exchange Admin Center here. And if I just scroll down, again, here is Christy here. I've got exactly the same details here, but here you'll find it in the Other tab at the moment. So you can see here, I can go in and I can say, hey, right, I want to place her account on litigation hold. Now, I can put in a number of days here. So if I want to specify a number of days, so for this example, I might say 30 days. I can put in a reason for this. So I can put in a note to the user. And I can also, if we have an internal help page, I can send that user to. So again, it could be just simply for operational reasons. You want to keep a permanent copy of something, or it's for legal reasons. Now, if it's for legal reasons, essentially what happens when I place this account on hold, data continues to flow automatically. Everything's fine. Christy will still get her mail. She can send, receive mail. The only difference here is that she cannot empty the recycle bins. So any kind of evidence would not be deleted. All right. And that's basically how we can do litigation hold. Now, just to mention a couple of things. If I just go into the refresh this page, I'll just quickly refresh this, and we'll go back in. And sometimes it can take a little bit of time just to kind of come through. So you can see it's active. Okay, the status, that active status may change to on hold. So in time you will see that the status will change. So if I just go back here, and you can see it's on hold at the moment, but I can then go back in and manage that litigation hold. Now, after that 30-day period, the hold will expire. You can see the date that it was created, and it will expire. But again, I can now manually go in. I can switch that off, and there we go. All right. So that's one way to place a mailbox on hold. Now, the other solution is, what if we wanted to do, let's say, the entire user's account? So for this, I'm going to come into my Purview admin center. This is my compliance, of course, admin center that was recently rebranded. And here I'm going to scroll down, and I'm essentially going to come into something called, where are we? I'm going to come into eDiscovery. So eDiscovery currently has two versions. One is standard and one is premium. And again, depending on your license, you may get one or the other or both. So again, for standard, you may come in here, maybe it's just for operational reasons, and the premium version adds some extra functionality. So for example, if you're working with a legal team or with law enforcement or something like that. So one of the first things that you would typically do here is you would create a case. So I'll call this Christie's case. Okay, and again, I'll click on save. Of course, you can put in a description. Now, to be honest, the e-discovery and the content search and the auditing features are very, very high level features and quite specialist. So this is something that not every administrator would have access to. And in fact, you actually need to give e-discovery permissions. The e-discovery admin role needs to be given to a particular user, because with the e-discovery role, not only can you search for a user's content, emails, attachments, but you can actually read the content as well. So if you're trying to perform or do a digital investigation, this is an incredibly powerful tool. So I'm just clicking into Christie's case here, and one of the first things you can do is I would go here and and create a hold. So again, I'll call this Christie's hold. Okay, and again, you can put in a little description, and in here I'm going to say, yeah, I want to do an exchange mailbox. So again, I can scroll down. Okay, it's a bad example. Christie doesn't have a mailbox that's got any content. I'll just use Patty as an example here. So we set up the user. So let's say this is Christie's account. Again, it could be a SharePoint site. It could be a public folder. Again, it might be a Microsoft team or something like that. So once you've chosen the user's mailbox, it can also be a group or a Microsoft team as well. So it doesn't just need to be a user. Then what we can do is the difference here is you can now search for content within it. So for example, if you were searching for a specific piece of evidence or something like that, and you can either use just keyword search, or you can use the Custo query language editor, which is now becoming popular in 365 and in Azure. You can also add a condition as well. So a condition is essentially like a rule. So is it what type of message is it? Where's it coming from? Who's it going to? Is there a specific date? Is it a specific type of communication? So not only can you place the content on hold, but you can also search for the content within it. So this whole account has now gone on hold. And again, if you did like a Microsoft group or a Microsoft team, it wouldn't just include the mailbox, it would also include all of the content. All right, so there we go. That's how you can do not only litigation hold, but also legal hold. Very powerful features. So there you have it, what to do when offboarding employees in Microsoft 365. Hey, listen, I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please bump that like button. It really does make a difference to my channel. And if you've not subscribed, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and you won't miss out on the future videos that I've got planned for you. And as always, comments, questions, feedback, I love it. Get it down below and I'll do my best for you. All right, so that's it for this week. Thanks so much for dropping by. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Okay? You take care. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button, and you won't miss out.